I am Ibrahim Traoré. Today I want to speak directly to my brothers and sisters and say that I truly thank this channel, Voice of Africa with Ibrahim Traoré. This is not just a channel, it is our voice, a powerful voice that creates videos every day, awakening Africa, revealing the truth, and giving us the courage to move forward. I have personally witnessed how these short videos deliver the truth in the simplest way, through clear images and examples. And my wish is that this channel will also create longer videos so that more of our people can learn, share love, and strengthen the unity of Africa. This is not just the voice of a channel, this is the voice of Africa itself. So I call upon my people, give strength to this voice, support it, and let the world see that Africa is awake, Africa stands tall, and Africa will never bow.
The tariff that shook a continent, Washington's surprise strike. It didn't begin with smoke or fire. It began with silence, broken not by bombs, but by a single document. On August 1, 2025, Washington signed a decree that carried no gunpowder but detonated across Africa like an earthquake. A 50% tariff was slapped on Burkina Faso's most precious natural export, shea butter. No consultation. No negotiation. No warning. To the policymakers in D.C., it was just another tool of leverage. But to more than 160,000 women who had built their lives around shea, it was not paperwork. It was survival. For decades, the butter churned in Burkina Faso's cooperatives had fueled cosmetic empires from Paris to New York. Yet in one stroke, it was branded expendable, disposable, unworthy. The West's message was sharp and simple: bend or break. But Captain Ibrahim Traoré, soldier, statesman, and symbol of defiance, chose neither. The first shock. Within hours of the decree, he convened his trade council. His words were direct. They tax our labor, our heritage, and the very hands that feed our women. Those words lit a fire. From the capital to the smallest villages, the tariff was not seen as economics. It was warfare in disguise. In the rural town of Bulsa, a woman named Aminata sat cross-legged on the earth, hands still sticky with churned shea paste. She asked herself a question no mother should have to ask. Would tomorrow bring food or hunger? Across the nation, warehouses locked, trucks stood idle under the brutal sun, and factories suspended procurement. By the second day, haulage volumes had fallen by 32%. Drivers slept in their cabs, paid only when the trucks moved, yet nothing moved. In America, buyers went silent. Phone calls from Burkina Faso's exporters rang unanswered. Distributors in Missouri and Florida froze contracts. Some rerouted to Ghana and Benin. Others simply disappeared. What Washington called economic realignment, Traoré saw clearly: betrayal. Defiance, not desperation. Unlike leaders of the past, he did not plead. He pivoted. On August 2nd, he summoned agricultural unions and declared emergency assistance for local cooperatives. They will not break us by starving our people. The phrase traveled faster than any export shipment. By dawn the next day, headlines in Nairobi, Mumbai, Dubai, and Dhaka echoed his defiance. In London, the Shea Futures Index spiked 11%. Traders panicked. Analysts whispered of an approaching trade war. But this story was never just about butter. It was about control. About who owns the first mile of a global supply chain, and who cashes in on the last dollar. The silent crisis in the West. In Illinois and Georgia, cosmetic labs scrambled to reformulate creams. But no chemical substitute could replicate Burkina's signature blend, the creamy texture, the perfect fatty acid balance. Consumers noticed. Creams no longer absorbed. Bombs felt greasy. Shelves carried products stripped of their origin labels. In boutique beauty circles, whispers spread, "This isn't real shea. Something's wrong." Clarissa Woodson, owner of a natural skincare shop in Chicago, stared at empty shelves. 3 months now, no shea again. From Brooklyn to Miami, small businesses collapsed. Staff were laid off. Founders taped shipping boxes by hand to save costs. One owner confessed, "Margins are gone. If rent rises again, we're finished." Washington had aimed to pressure Burkina Faso. Instead, it wounded its own economy. The counterpunch. On August 4th, Traoré made his move. China's Ministry of Commerce issued licenses for 128 Burkinabe companies, a $2.1 billion agreement with no quotas, no debt traps, and direct rail access. It wasn't charity. It was strategy. 3 processing facilities broke ground in Shenzhen, Tianjin, and Nanjing. Jobs were created. Technology transfers guaranteed. For the first time in decades, Burkina Faso would not export raw shea only to buy it back in luxury packaging. It would refine, brand, and distribute on its own terms. Women who once cracked nuts barefoot now scanned shipping manifests in Mandarin. Shea was no longer Africa's raw material. It had become Africa's sovereign commodity. In Accra and Lagos, radio hosts asked, could cocoa be next? Palm oil, cashew. In Dar es Salaam, murals declared, from soil to sovereignty. The Shea Doctrine. Burkina Faso's pride had transformed from protest into policy, from survival into sovereignty. What began as resistance to a single tariff was now shaping into something far greater, a framework the world came to know as Shea diplomacy. It was no longer just an economic adjustment, it was a cultural declaration. University classrooms across Africa and beyond began dissecting it as a case study in economic independence and national strategy. Students debated in lecture halls how a single commodity, dismissed for decades as insignificant, had been weaponized into leverage. On festival stages, poets wove its story into verse. Musicians sang its defiance into anthems that echoed across villages, capitals, and diaspora communities. Even in policy circles far removed from the fields of Bobo Dioulasso, the ripple was undeniable. Burkina Faso had forced the world to listen. The African Union itself echoed President Traoré's words with reverence. When we control the first mile and the last word, we control the story. That sentence cut through centuries of dependency. For generations, Africa had been told it lacked the infrastructure, the systems, the capacity to lead. But Burkina Faso proved the opposite. Infrastructure could be built. Systems could be enforced. Capacity could be trained. What mattered was not permission. It was preparation. The truth grew louder with every shipment eastward. Each barrel of shea that left Burkina Faso no longer symbolized raw material stripped of value. It carried with it contracts, enforcement, and vision. It carried dignity. And in that dignity was a doctrine. This is not aid. This is strategy. A strategy born from necessity, matured in defiance, and executed with clarity. The Shea Doctrine was not only about butter. It was about a continent rewriting its place in the world, proving that sovereignty is not a gift handed down, but a discipline built from the ground up. The West reels, Africa rises. In Washington, trade officials scrambled. Their decree had backfired. Brands lost loyalty. Consumers questioned authenticity. Former colonies they once dictated to now negotiated as equals. One Burkinabe exporter summarized it in a single line. We don't chase contracts anymore. They come to us. That sentence became a poster in the National Business School. A decade of exploitation reborn as leverage. Burkina Faso's butter was no longer a commodity. It was a flag, a message, a map, a doctrine beyond shea. By mid-August 2025, smallholder cooperatives accessed digital invoicing and cold storage for the first time. Women once paid pennies now negotiated in boardrooms. Payments arrived within 72 hours. In Tokyo, K-beauty startups branded Burkina's shea as the gold of the global south. In Jakarta, palm oil refiners took notes. In Ghana, ministries drafted cocoa verticalization plans. Africa was no longer whispering for inclusion. It was writing the rules of trade. The bigger question. So ask yourself, when did butter stop being butter and become a sovereign symbol? When did Africa stop begging to be included and start building its own tables? And if Burkina Faso could pivot with shea, what's stopping the rest of the continent from doing the same with coffee, cocoa, cotton, or gold? This was never about tariffs. It was about dignity. And the lesson is simple. Dignity is not granted. It is prepared, protected, and enforced. Burkina Faso didn't just survive a tariff. It turned it into a doctrine. Not rebellion, readiness. Not charity, strategy. Not silence, but sovereignty. Final call. So now the question reaches you. What does sovereignty mean in your language? What does dignity look like in your life? If you believe Africa's voice is no longer an echo but a command, share this story. Share it with someone who still believes Africa must beg for inclusion. Share it with someone who doubts the power of readiness. Because this is more than Shea. This is the future. And it begins, not tomorrow, but today.